Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first session of The Portal by The Source Connection. Liz B here with my sister, Tara Long, and let's just take a moment to invite some coherence in a sharing of this field of infinite possibilities. So please roll your shoulders back, open the heart space, tuck the chin in, and close the outer eyes. And I'd like for you to gaze your closed eyes at the point right between your brows here. And just start taking into consideration your internal landscaping. The thoughts are persistent. Just put them into clouds and let them fly away. Bringing all of our attention to the breath, the inhale and the exhale. I invite you to mantra your breath. So as you inhale, you mentally vibrate loving. And as you exhale, you mentally vibrate awareness. Inhaling loving, exhaling awareness. Get distracted, come back to the breath, come back to the mantra. Feeling yourself part of nature, a natural being. Listening to the birds in the background, greeting us, reminding us, soothing us. Inviting balance, coherence, and clarity. We'll end this with 3 long deep breaths and 3 exhales through the lips. So just sigh the breath out. Welcome again. So grateful for you being here, for taking the time and the space to come immerse yourself with us into the knowledge and walk through the portal in this first time to natural law. Tara, take it along. Take it.
Yes. Yes, I just need to do my screen share here. Present. Here we go. All right, everyone. Oh, sorry, just why am I on the bottom there? Okay. There we go. All right, the portal to natural law. Yes, this is such a rich, deep topic that is also very simple. But I find the most simple things are actually the most profound. All right, so I'm just trying to technically put all you guys in the little squares on the right spot so I could still see this presentation. Okay. Yeah, the portal to natural law. And you guys, most of you know us. We are who the two of us make up the Source Connection. We have a podcast and various other things that we do in the world in these times. And we really had this idea for the portal. The name just kind of came to us. We thought, oh, the portal to what? And then it was like, well, just the portal, and then whatever else we're talking about that week. So month. We're going to be doing these once a month, and we hope you'll join us. But we really felt that this first one, natural law, is the foundation, is such a beautiful, like laying the foundation of the house that we can then build upon. And it's something that, again, is so simple and seems like should be common sense in the world, but unfortunately it's not. And so, yeah, so we're happy to share. And we wanted to offer this first one to everybody, just as our gift, because yeah, we did feel an overflow and we wanted to share that with you guys. So this is us. I'm a coach or practice as a coach and mentor and lots of other things, an acupuncturist. And Liz and I came together, I guess 2 or so years ago now. So we've been 2020. Yeah, 2020, October 2020. And then we started the podcast that following, spring, summer. So so we've been doing this for a while, and we're happy to have you with us. And Liz, I don't know if you want to say anything about yourself here.
It's I've been thinking about how do one introduces him or herself, right? And the words are so small. I'll just say that I love empowering people to remember who they truly are in their essence and how that translates into their experience of life. And I do that through artistry and yoga, meditation, breath work, motherhood. I've been a musician most of my life and decided that I wanted to help people remember, ever since remembering myself. So thank you, sister.
Yeah, and that's why Liz and I work so well together and match so well, because we have a shared mission of that remembrance, remembering our wholeness, remembering not only our infinite selves, but our human selves together. Yeah, and at these times, we've all been activated, right? In different ways. Beautiful sunflower, Laura. We've all been activated. So here we are together. So let's start. Liz, do you want to start with this one?
Yeah, let's get to the definition of the words, right? Yeah. We have natural law, and natural from the word natural world, and the etymology of the word nature without the vowels is from spirit. So not caused by mankind. Nature as the phenomena of the physical world and as our own inherent features, our essence. So the nature that translates outside of us, the nature that is inside of us that expresses as us. And law, from the Latin word ligare, which is to bind and to connect, a set of immutable principles. So that's just the basic definition of those two words. And we'll get to more of the unraveling and the understanding of how we're working with that here today.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Liz. So it's not political, it's not religious, scientific, or new age. And we're going to go more into these things. Natural law is actually independent from these. It does not hold dogma or belief systems as a lot of these systems do. And it's a guiding system that's available to all of us, whether you choose to acknowledge it or not. And, Liz and I believe that inherently as human beings, we all have this guiding system within us, whether we use our free will to gain the knowledge or not. And we'll talk more about the importance of knowledge. And excuse me, I also want to say that natural law can be called a lot of other things as well, like spiritual law, universal law, God's law, creator's law, consequential law. And that'll become more why it can be called that as well, very aptly. So.
Yeah. So natural law holds that as humans, we all, number one, possess reason. So that means that we have the ability to discern good from evil, right from wrong. We all have free will, and we like to believe that we all have inherent morality. So natural law will be a set of universal, objective, non-man-made conditions, immutable, which govern the consequences of behavior.
So it's a good place to start is truth versus perception. And some of these things may, I know, they can be triggering sometimes, especially if, like myself, you've been on a spiritual path, for many years, which is beautiful. And we're going to talk a little bit more about some of the things that have been co-opted from that or distorted, in that path. But there's this idea that perception creates, or perception is truth somehow, or perception, your truth, my truth, all of that, which in certain circumstances that can be true, right? You perceive something a different way than I do. So we like to say perception creates your experience. But in the context of natural law and what we're talking about today, truth is. So it's that which does not waver. It is not based on perception. So it's not subjective. It is objective. Perception is based on what one, while perception is based on what one wants to see or doesn't want to see. So, in the world now, we can see a lot of this happening around us where there is the truth of something. And we can talk more about this, but truth can be also defined as something that's happened in the past or that's happening in the present, not the future. Truth is not available in the future because it hasn't happened yet. So we'll talk more about this, but that's just the difference between truth versus perception. And this is something that, in the New Age movement has been distorted. And there are a lot of good things about, about that movement, but a lot of it has been distorted to say that, well, whatever you want to be true, you just perceive it that way. And then it is. So it gets a little sticky, right? And we can talk about, I know we have some examples of this too, that Liz and I discussed, and it can be as simple as it's raining outside, right? And the truth is there's water falling from the sky, and that if you go out there without an umbrella or some covering, you will get wet. That's the truth. That's a fact. The perception could be, oh, it's such a beautiful, I want to go outside and get, it's not good or bad. It's just, you can perceive it differently. You can say whatever you want about it. But the truth is, the fact is, it is raining and you will get wet if you go outside without covering. Right. Just the same as, and we can talk about relevant topics too, like what we're seeing today, like certain things that are, that we see that are harmful for people. Right. And one can perceive that however they would like to, and they can not see it if they don't want to see it, or they can choose to see it if they want to see it. And that's perception versus the fact that things are harming people.
Yeah. Just to wrap that up, and truth is simply that which is.
Yeah.
It's objective, it's not mystical, and perception is the lens which we decide to see reality through. Yeah, I do want to do an observation here. I do believe that very few people may have acquired a certain kind of vibrational frequency that they get to alter what's happening in the physical, but as a collective, as a community, most of us are not there yet. So at least in my experience, we're upgrading.
Yeah. But it's possible.
It's totally possible.
It's totally possible. Everything is possible. Yeah. But where we are now, right, as a consciousness on this planet collectively we're still, in this truth versus perception phase, we'll say.
And I noticed a couple people joined. Welcome. We are recording this presentation. If you do have questions, please post them on the chat, and we'll have a time where we'll come together and talk and share and all of that. You can also write it down if you don't want to lose the question or the thought you'd like to share. So now we go into consciousness. And consciousness can be defined as sentient and awareness of internal and external existence. So it's the ability to perceive, to be aware of, to be in relation with. One can have more or less access to expanded consciousness, and that's based on so many different factors: our conditioning, our stories, the history that we've lived through, the place that we were born, the family that we were born into, including our own choices and willingness to nurture this awareness. So it comes a time in someone's life that they can choose pursuit of consciousness and expanded awareness. With an expanded consciousness, there is less attachment to one's beliefs, opinions, identities, with the ability to see more and be aware of truth. So the more that we choose to embark into this path, the more open we become and more available to what's out there right in front of us. So we're not as threatened. Our ego is less threatened by the pursuit of truth and what is.
Yeah. And we see that in these times as well. Yeah, if someone we've talked about this before, kind of the macrocosm of being able to go inward and see your own shadows, and then being able to go outward externally and see the shadows that exist in the world, and really being able, your consciousness being at a level such that it can allow for you to see the truth and what's actually going on in the world. So as the experience of consciousness translates, of course, into our very human experience, it's what we're here for, we can highlight what's often seen as the three aspects of its expression in practical terms. So, and this actually we'll talk about a little bit more later, but natural law, really the expression of natural law in a nutshell, is the alignment of your thoughts, your mind, your emotions, your heart, and your gut, your actions. So when if these are not aligned, if they're confused, or you're thinking something, but you're not actually taking the action in the world, it's not in integrity, then you're out of alignment with yourself, clearly, and also with natural law. So when we're able to gather all of these aspects of ourselves and be, in coherence with them, then naturally what happens is we have this right action or right behavior that we don't have to think about at all. So step one, or the first thing that we all, is our job is for us to take responsibility for that internally. Like, are my actions actually a reflection of what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling, or am I hiding myself? Am I hiding something either to myself or to the world?
Yeah. So the purpose of this is, with this knowledge, with this understanding, that inspiration comes, right? Inspired action will come, because being willfully ignorant will impair the manifestation of the right action. And we can even go a little bit, before I talk about this PS right here, into the different kinds of ignorance, right? One can be ignorant because there's no information available. And one can be willfully ignorant, which seems like a lot of the times that we're living through right now, because information is out there and it does not take a lot of effort to look and to find. And so it's an availability of someone's internal resourcing, to be able to say, wait a minute, or tell me more about this, and to get curious and all of that. So just clarifying that there is a difference there. And I once heard, I think it was Paul Enslaved, who said ignorance, which I love that, because it is to ignore something, right? So there's that conscious decision to not understand or understand or look for. And we did a PS here because both of us have been nurtured and also suppressed in the new age movement. I wouldn't say we're not victims of the new age movement, but that was part of our upbringing in our own spirituality. And so we wanted to do the little PS here. It's that in the context of consciousness, some of us have come to certain awarenesses, due to our self-exploration and real life experiences around the following phenomena of the new age movement. So this is stuff that we see, which is disassociation, like disassociation from the body, and saying it's all in the spiritual realm. So you're always trying to like ascend, like go somewhere else that's not here, while this existence is what's very real and happening. Mentalism, everything is up here. So we typed in suppression of the masculine, but it's really the balance of it all, the feminine and the masculine that exists in all of us. And the suppression of the masculine here, it's specifically the right action of the masculine, that presence that protects, that goes out, and that does create that kind of change, right? That impact. Being shamed or guilt, keeping it trapped, I'm doing something wrong, right? And if you think about law of attraction, it's like, well, you just have to think about the good thing and then you attract it. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh my God, what am I thinking? I'm not attracting it. And finally, solipsism, which would be the view that the self is all that can be known to exist, right? So it's this very self-centered, like, view or quality of being that kind of disregards everything else and the impact that we all have on each other and this collective experience that we're having.
Yeah. I want to share too, because I have a lot of personal experience here, as Liz mentioned, that we both do. And I think it's really important. For me, this is one of the most important things. And one of the things that really, really resonated for me when studying natural law. And, I've recently watched a lot of this information comes from Mark Passio. If you guys aren't familiar with him, we credit him, of course, in the end. But he has like an 8-9 hour class on natural law. If you want to go very deep, into all of this, and that's on his website, which we'll give to you guys at the end. But we really wanted to distill it into something that was, just an hour or less, and very, very practical and easy to understand. And something that I really want to talk about here is moral relativism, which is something that, happens a lot in our culture these days. Like, oh, there's really no right or wrong. It's just like, whatever you think is right for you, or whatever I think is right for me. And, that suddenly becomes, well, what I think is good for me versus what I think is wrong for me, and this ability to justify any act, literally almost any action in the spiritual realm or with spiritual fantasy, like, oh, that person chose to come and interact with me, and like, oh, I did something, I harmed this person, right? I did something, whatever it was, I hurt them, I assaulted them, I killed them, whatever it was, but we had to come back and live out our past lives, or I'm just giving an example, something. I mean, you can literally justify any action through that lens. And I spent time here, in my my quest for ultimate truth, self-realization, non-dualism. And I'm not saying any of these things are bad. It's beautiful to realize yourself and who and what you are, of course. But in the extreme, it does create quite naturally this disembodiment and dissociation. And then, oh, I'm not the body, which ultimately, of course, we're not the body, right? We exist long after the body, and we were here before we were in this body, if you believe that. However, it's very important that we're here in these bodies for a reason. So just really honoring that and loving that, versus it's a way to numb out too, and not actually have to deal with life and the way you feel about certain things, and things that may have happened to you, that traumas that you may need to actually sit with and work through, and yeah, the whole very surface level law of attraction, where you just get to say, oh, I'm doing something wrong because I haven't manifested what I've been thinking about, for whatever, sit in meditation for however long. So this is really, really important part of understanding natural law, because again, it can get different shades of gray here, if you have a background or experience in like self-realization.
Yeah, and before we get to the knowledge piece, I'd like to share some very practical little things about self-realization that may be useful to some of you. I don't know if any of you are familiar with the Enneagram processes, and I see some raised hands. Oh my God, it just slipped my mind as I was saying. The Enneagram.
Human design.
Human design.
Yeah.
It's such a way, the Tao, it's such a way, the I Ching, it's such a way to remember the fabric of us, and to then return to oneself with compassion and self-love, and a little bit of a roadmap why we are wired in certain ways. And I think a lot of what Tara was talking about pulls us towards this embodiment, and ultimately is this integration that we need of like understanding ourselves and really embodying ourselves to the best ability that we can. So then with that embodiment, we can go out and be inspired right action, right? Inspired behavior, inspired words, speech, graceful conversations and interactions, where real change comes from. Then we can move. I just wanted to do that little PS right there. Yeah, human design, the I Ching, Enneagram. There's another one I'm missing. And if you guys remember, put it in the chat. And if you haven't done a reading of that sort, there's so many resources available out there to do. There's people that actually do it. You can find tests online, and that can give you a broader overview, but it's a real gift to oneself to receive that from somebody, a reading where you go, oh my God, I love myself. And you just find a little bit of your ins through those things. It's just fascinating to me. All right, we can move on to knowledge. Very important piece right here. We all have the capacity to discover, understand, and harmonize with natural law, what we were talking about. In order to align with it, we need to know its principles. So natural law is defined as the principles of coordination and guidance that we, man and womankind, are governed by. It is inherent, based in nature and truth, and it's immutable and binding, like we said in the beginning. So the understanding of natural law, it's centered upon bringing our own consciousness into alignment with that objective morality that we talked in the beginning, that we believe we all have, that Tara and I believe that we all have that compass inside of us. So it starts to get clearer for us which behaviors don't cause harm and which behaviors do cause harm, which is the basis of all of this conversation here.
Yeah, also natural law is not personal. Again, it's not a belief system, a religion, a science, anything like that. It doesn't care what you think, and it doesn't care whether you believe in it or not. It just is. So there can be an example of, you know, someone, a little girl going towards a cliff, and she's about to fall off. And does gravity care that she doesn't understand gravity? No, she's going to fall anyway. So you got to go scoop her up, right? So natural law. These are, we keep saying immutable, which means fixed or unchanged. And again, I think Liz and I talked about this in the beginning, for the level of consciousness that we're at as an aggregate in this moment, right? Anything is possible. I believe that. I know Liz believes that. That it is possible that these natural laws may also expand with our consciousness as we do. So do we have another knowledge slide, or was that it? Because there's a few others. That's it, right? Yeah, there's a few other things I wanted to say. So Mark Passio, I know he said this, and I really liked it. He said, knowing what's going on in the world is really hard work. Right. And that can be true. It doesn't have to be hard, but for people who, like Liz was talking about before, are maybe willfully ignorant, I think that's kind of the obstacle, is like, wow, this is going to take a lot of myself, a lot of my time and energy to put into this, to know the truth, to know what's really going on. And there's lots of different barriers to that, right? Our own identities and things we're attached to and all of that. But the reward is so great. I mean, the reward is truth, as we know, and truth, it naturally expands our consciousness. So this idea of being free, which is something that I believe all humans truly desire at their core, is freedom, inner freedom, outer freedom, freedom all around. And that's not possible if we don't have knowledge, if we're ignoring willfully. There's ignoring out of a sense of being naive, I guess that's called nescience, where you're not, it's like someone who has zero access to the knowledge, which again, just isn't really the reality these days, because almost everyone has access to the knowledge. And if you're in some tiny, village or whatever, then you're not even affected by anything that's gone on the last 3 years, if you have no contact with civilization. So then it doesn't really matter, right? So you cannot be ignorant and free. That's the point I wanted to make.
I also want to touch upon something really fascinating that I've heard. A couple of years ago, I met a military doctor, and since then she's not in the military. She hasn't been in the military for a while, but when she was, I'll make this story short just to see what the possibilities are when there is a different understanding of what's possible, just that baseline. They were invited to go into some indigenous tribes, and they found that the tribes were literally growing back body parts. And one would think, oh, that's not possible, right? So what is possible? So with an expanded awareness of what it's possible, then we're breaking through the limitations and the barriers of what we've thought. And also when we look back in history, we may think, oh, this was never possible, right? Before they flew an airplane, could that really happen? And then all of a sudden the airplane is up and it's flying. So we're also working with that here, and we keep tapping on this just to remind you that we're talking about the baseline of most people's awarenesses. So it's not this completely just hardened thing that we're dealing with. Let's go into some of the principles here, and we'll just distill them really quickly, and then we can get into that if there are questions about it at the end. Mentalism, correspondence, vibration, polarity. Can you pull the other ones out, sister, just so we read the list and then go back? Rhythm, cause and effect, gender, and care. Now we'll go back to talk a little bit about each. So thoughts create the quality of our experience here on earth. That's mentalism, right? So it gets projected here, it gets created here. That's also where it trickles down to our perception of what the experiences we've had and how the lenses and we choose to see certain things. Correspondence, the micro and macrocosmos are reflections of each other. Vibration, the universe is vibratory energy manifesting itself. Polarity, everything is dual. So it's always that swing of the pendulum and that duality.
Yeah, rhythm. Okay, so rhythm, everything flows in and out. The pendulum swing manifests in everything. And it may not be equal, right? The in and the out, but it does flow in and out. Cause and effect, I think it might be maybe one of the biggest ones, cause and effect and care. So, cause and effect, it's pretty self-explanatory. For every action, there's a reaction and vice versa. And this, it's not one-to-one. So there can be a time lag on this, which is how people can miss if they have a pattern of something. They can miss like, oh, I did that and then this happened. So if it happened instantaneously, someone would go, oh, I made that choice and then this thing happened that I didn't like, so I'm not going to do that. It's like the dog and Pavlov and all of that. But that's not how cause and effect works in our world, in our universe right now. So we might have, it might be a time lag of a month. It might be a time lag of a lifetime. I mean, we just don't know. So that asks us to be very intentional with our actions and our words and wherever we're coming from and how we're presenting in the world, because there is always an effect. There's always cause and effect. And something that, and I'll just put this in there, food for thought. I don't necessarily believe this to be true, but I just want to say something because I love, like it makes me think. So it's like, okay, is this true? And how can this not be true? But Mark Passio, he said, when he talked about cause and effect, he said, oh, people, really want to create the new right now, and he said, it's not possible until slavery ends. Slavery has to end. And then the effect, is that the new grows, but it can't grow until slavery ends, and slavery of humans on earth at this time. Right. So I'm not saying I believe that. I'm just getting into your own, processes of cause and effect. What is that? Could it be that one little part of it ends and then something can grow here? Or, it's not, to me, it's not black or white or all or nothing or anything like that. But that is one of the natural laws, is cause and effect. Gender, that's a hot topic these days. But everything has its masculine and feminine principles, right? And I think we can all agree that that whatever we think about, gender identity in these days, everything has its masculine and feminine. And when we try to mute that or ignore that or deny that or say that this doesn't matter, we get into some trouble, which we're seeing right now, as a species. Things start to happen that we go, that actually doesn't really feel right. Why doesn't that feel right? Because it's going against natural law, this principle that everything has a masculine and a feminine. And care is this, also could be called the generative principle, which is not, which basically says that what we care about is what we put energy and attention on, right? In your daily life, in your day to day. So everything that you care about is basically what manifests more of in the world, right? It drives your thoughts, it drives your emotions, it drives your actions. So whatever we care about, and in order to care about something, We need knowledge, right?
Mm.
So we need to, it's all just building blocks. It's all just builds on each other. And something that I thought was really that I've never thought about it before, because we go back to the new age law of attraction stuff, where it's like, oh gosh, if you focus on something negative, it's going to happen. And then we go, oh my God, I don't want to focus on anything negative. Oh my God, it's going to happen, and by ignoring the negative, you're also fueling ignorance, and that grows. So, and Liz and I talk about this all the time, there's a balance. There's such a balance, and you have to know what that is for you inside of yourself, to not go, full on, like, all I'm doing is looking at all the negative stuff and it's, consuming me and all of that. And I'm not putting my head in the sand, right? There is a balance there, and it's going to be a little different for everybody, but being honest with yourself about what that balance is for you, where you can remain in alignment with your thoughts, your emotions, and your actions. And that's a really good, true north for you. Am I in alignment with that? Or is this pulling me away from that? Is me going down this rabbit hole for 2 hours pulling me away from that alignment? Or is not thinking, oh, it's too much, I'm too afraid to look at that, I'm not going to see it. Is that pulling you away from your alignment? Because in the back of your head or your mind or your heart, you're like, crap, I know I got to look at that. You just, right? Yeah.
How can you change something that you don't know exists? Right? How can we, so that, I think that rounds it up for the purpose of this presentation. And then the bigger picture of like understanding something and taking it in, it's the first step. And then from that place, it's where change gets created, right? Because if you don't know, there's no change, there's no evolving from that on.
Yeah.
So with all of that we said in the other slides, it's really about minding our own intentions and creations. And the more we come into alignment with ourselves, with our essence, the more we become mind and heartful of those things. Notice how life is reflecting back at you. Like, what is the experience that I'm having of life? And as Tara said before, sometimes the time between expression and result, or cause and effect, in the physical, in the experience, may not be as immediate. And sometimes it is. How many times, and I think everyone here can attest to this, right? Like, I thought of somebody, they called, or I needed something and somebody gifted it to me. Just like, that's instant cause and effect. It doesn't happen like that all the time. So sometimes it needs a little bit more consideration and a little bit more introspection to notice. Know that there's more than meets the eye. So there's way more to this experience than just what we see, touch, hear, feel, taste, smell. Tend to the natural rhythms and cycles. So also understanding that and respecting that, not pushing or forcing, but surrendering, and know when it is that we take action, and when we pause, and when we receive, and when we give. Now, acting in honor and respect of these principles, do not steal. This is the foundation of all of this. Life, free will, property, or consent. And this really brings it to what's happening in the world right now, right? Or has been happening for a long time. And why this distillation has been kept somewhat in the shadows, because once people realize all that and the tie it all together to their understanding, to the systems that they're aligned with, and they, oh, wait a minute, what am I doing here? So getting into that, and then we're going to distill that in a moment, but just, if anything, during this time we're together here, remember this: do not steal life, free will, property, or consent.
Yeah.
Just boom.
Boom. Yeah, I'm going to go a little, just talk about the natural law transgressions that are named, and how you can see that they all boil down to, basically, they're all a form of theft. So of course, murder and assault, right? initiating violence, basically. We're going to talk about in the next couple slides how one does have a right to defend oneself. But we're talking about initiating violence. Rape is also you're stealing someone's free will to engage with you sexually. Theft, and again, this can be theft of property, and actually we'll see how all of these are property once we define property. Trespass, so you're going into somebody's home or space that they live in and you're stealing their security, basically. And coercion, coercing anyone in any way to do anything. Coercion usually happens by way of threat of violence or threat of or something bad is going to happen to you, right? So all of these transgressions are forms of theft, and basically theft of property, right? Your life is your property. Your rights are your property. We're going to talk more about what rights are in this context. Your freedom is your property. So you will be stealing, you can steal someone's free will, steal someone's choice. And so you can also put lying into this category as well, because you're stealing someone's choice to know the truth as you know it. So all wrongs are basically theft of someone's property. And I just want to say that something that I don't think we have it in the next slide because I don't think we wrote it down, but just as an example that people often don't think, they often don't think about this as being something that is a transgression, is taxation. And that's something that we all just go along with, not all of us, but a lot of folks go along with, because there is a threat of you're going to go to jail, we're going to come to your house, we're going to we're going to garnish your wages, whatever it is, especially in the US. I'm sure it's everywhere, with the IRS, and they threaten to. So if you're coercing someone to pay you money that's theirs, was that voluntary? That's not voluntary, right? Yeah, you're coercing them to do something. So whether you're taking 100% of whatever it is that they have, or you're taking 1% of whatever it is that they have, it is coercion and it is slavery. There is no other way to look at that. There is no justification for that. So this is just to get you to think a little bit about, what are you consenting to? What are you saying yes to? That might be uncomfortable to go, oh my God, if I didn't pay my taxes, I'm going to get in trouble. Like, I know, I've been there. We've all been there. We're all there. We've all been conditioned. And this is just one example, right? Driving, having a driver's license, another example. We won't get into all that unless you guys have questions. But there are ways to go about reclaiming yourself from the system in very practical ways. And we're actually going to talk about that in our next session of the portal, so that you guys can have, resources to get you started, on this path.
Morality. Such a good one, right? Because one could argue, is there inherent morality? For the purpose of this, Tara and I do believe that we all come with inherent morality. Now, at some level, if we look at the conditionings of the world and how things have turned out and have been for a long time, one could argue, do everyone have that compass inside of them? That's a question for all of us to ask ourselves, and to look into the world. And maybe some were born with it, some were born, maybe it's Maybelline. Isn't that a commercial?
Yeah.
Maybe some were born with it, or maybe
it's Maybelline. Yeah.
So morality is the quality of being in accord with standards of right and good conduct. We had an interview with Professor Julie Ponesi last year, I believe, where she talked about ethics. It's a really short conversation that we had with her. She only had a very
20 minutes. Yeah.
20 minutes. And she talked about how some people are questioning ethics. And it just shocked me that would even be a conversation. Oh, it's a valid principle. So that goes to show the state of the world that we're living in. Morality is objective. Meaning, you can ask yourself the simple question, does this action initiate harm? That will answer the question of morality right there. This internal compass is a guiding tool in how we move through life. It can help shine a light on what we're thinking, doing, creating, being. So if you ask yourself that question, it can be that initial step in honoring natural law, right? And to be in harmony with oneself and the creation, it's the first step into eliminating the suffering caused by harm, and then to be in alignment with natural law. So first, alignment with oneself, alignment with creation, that propels you into asking that question, does this cause harm? Choosing, and hopefully choosing a path that does not cause harm, then in alignment with the fruits of natural law and the beauty of natural law and what it gives.
Mm. Yeah, it seems and it sounds very simple, doesn't it? That does this initiate harm? Yes or no? In one of the videos I watched around natural law, they were asking like people on the street, basically, is morality objective or subjective? And I would have to say 95% of people said that it was subjective.
Just
And and morality is basically what I think is good, or what you think is good, or what. So that's just this little snapshot of where we're at, guys. And I want to bring this up not to just as a contrast, so we can see how close this is to the way that a lot of folks, where their mind is at. And I believe this has been part of the agenda and the conditioning that we've been in as human beings here on this planet, right? And this is the 4 pillars of Satanism, which is, I'll go through them very quickly, but I think it's super interesting because when I heard it, I was like, wow, that's actually, anyway. The first one is self-preservation is the highest order, meaning above all, I just have to make sure that I'm okay, right? And we see, I mean, that's really, if you look around in the world, you see that's a lot of folks are in that mindset, and especially the folks who are, perpetuating what we have going on right now. It's all about me and maybe my family, but the second one is, again, that moral relativism. There's no right or wrong. And these are like the pillars and the tenets that are taught in the Church of Satanism, which I really don't know much about at all. No right or wrong. What's right is what's good for me, basically. Number 3, social Darwinism. So that's basically the elite's rule because we are more evolved. We know you guys, aren't as good as we are. The oligarchy tends the herd. So that's number 3. And the 4th is eugenics. And we all know what that is, right? So I'm just saying that to kind of showcase, what we're seeing and where we're at, and in terms of, we can wipe all that out with this very simple, does this action initiate harm?
If everyone was asking him or herself that question at every moment, can we even imagine like the impact that would have in the whole collective? It's just incredible to consider that. If everyone just went back to him or her own alignment, and moment by moment, day by day, action by action, thought by thought, does this cause harm? Does this initiate harm?
Mm-hmm.
In what you were talking about right now with that elitism and that division of hierarchy, it goes right here into some of the considerations that we did when we're preparing this presentation. It's just this knowing that everyone possesses the exact same value, meaning there is no more important person than the other. And when we say inherent rights, the word rights can be thought of as man-made government rights.
Yeah.
That's not what we're talking about. We're just talking about what we possess as we come into this world, right? All beings are endowed with self-ownership. We believe that you are the owner of yourself. I am the owner of myself. Legality does not equate morality. A lot of people would think, oh, well, it's the law, and because it's that, it's moral. And we want to start to look into the systems that we've agreed upon and to really notice, is this really moral? Authority is untrue, immoral, and illegitimate. Because somebody wears a costume does not make them have authority over you, does not give them jurisdiction over your own being. And that's one of the biggest lies that most of us have bought into. How many times we're driving and there's a cop behind us and immediately we tense up, right? And we, oh my God, am I doing something wrong? I'm just going to keep in track, and just starting to soften to this idea that that's a man or a woman underneath that costume, and that costume does not give them any moral authority over you. That is one of the lies that we've been taught to believe and to unconsciously agree upon, because most people never asked that question. I know times in my life where I never asked that question. I just assumed and I just took it in and I just thought, this is how it is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're so conditioned to that. I just got pulled over a week ago. Yeah, got pulled over for going like 12 miles over the speed limit, right? And I was like, oh man, this is hilarious. This woman had nothing better to do. She was just sitting there waiting for me. So yeah, so she pulled me over, and it was actually the first time in my life that because I've been studying this for, and embodying and doing the work of embodying this for a couple of years now, she pulled me over and I didn't have that, like, that my heart didn't speed up. I wasn't anxious. I wasn't scared. I wasn't nothing. I was like, oh, okay, cool. Oh, here's a woman who's acting as a police officer, in her costume. Okay, great. So I took her ticket. I agreed to take her ticket because I wasn't, I could have gone. I did talk to her about natural law though. I said, hi, do you know? And she was very open and very polite, very kind. And I said, okay, well, this won't be the last that you'll hear from me, around this ticket. And she said, okay. And she was, so anyway, we could talk about this in the next session too, but I did what I needed to do to not consent to that citation, because it is, if there's no, there was no harm that was done. I didn't harm anybody by going 12 miles over the speed limit. There was no harm. There was no, nothing illegitimate or immoral about that. Right. So therefore there's nothing else. There's no situation. There's no citation. There's nothing to talk about. We can go more into that next time, but I just want that's just something very tiny that we're so conditioned to that we don't even think about, right? So the reason why authority is untrue is because anything that coerces or is enforced by threat and or violence is immoral. And, for example, theft and slavery. And I would say anything that coerces is slavery, if you consent to it. Mm-hmm. And sometimes we just have to, and I get it that this is a process and we can't just wake up tomorrow and say, I'm not paying taxes. I'm not doing any of these, all of this stuff. It does take, you really have to know yourself. You have to know who you are in order internally for that energy to be projected out into the world for you to take these right actions. So first it's about knowing yourself and being in alignment again, getting the whatever knowledge that you need so that you can then take the right actions for you. So the only legitimate human interactions are those which are voluntary and mutually agreed upon by all participants. Imagine a world where we interacted with each other and we spoke to each other in this way. And wow, I just can't even imagine a world, in which the woman pulls you over dressed in her costume. It says, hi, ma'am, do you think what do you think why do you think I pulled you over? And you have this conversation and you go, oh, you're right. Yeah. Well, I guess if a kid was crossing the street, maybe I could have missed that, and you have this conversation. It's voluntary and it's polite and it's just a totally different experience than you got to do this because I said so. And we actually need money at the police station because we need to get, our new like water filter or whatever. So we're going to be pulling more people over this month or whatever it is. Right. So that's a really big one, and we just kind of are going to say it here, but we'll ask some reflection questions at the end. And also, according to natural law, one has a right to defend oneself. So if someone is threatening your life, your property, whatever that may be, you do have a right to say, no, I don't consent to that. And actually, you're not initiating the violence in that case. You're just defending yourself. And of course, that can be a whole nother subject, but that's all I'll say about that. Ooh,
That's all I gotta say about that.
All I gotta say about that. And I just, do you want me to do this one too, sis? Because I just experienced this with Mark, but up to you.
Sure. We just we thought that it would be a beautiful addition here to have this graph for you guys to just really take in a little bit more. And we know some people are more visual than others. I'm one of those people. I like seeing things.
Yeah.
And again, giving credit to Mark for a lot of the depths of this work. And we really wanted to make it just kind of simple. And again, it's just the beginning of the initiation, right? It's just that like first, and then things come from that space. And I'll let you take it away here and I'll add anything to it, because I really love how it's presented.
It's pretty eloquent. And now, do you guys, I just saw your message, Liz, do you guys want to take a 5-minute break? Because we really only have 3 or 4 slides left, but if you want to take a 5-minute break, we can do that.
Even do a 2-minute break.
Or 2-minute.
Yeah, if anybody needs
that to use the restroom,
raise your hands, thumbs up. And if we don't see thumbs up, we'll just keep on going. And then okay, I see
a thumb. So we'll take a couple minutes. I'll just
a couple minutes. Yeah, it's
see if there's any
10 minutes past the hour. So we'll come back at 15 minutes past the hour. So a 5-minute quick if you want to grab a snack, a tea, a potty break, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, let me how do I, oh my gosh.
Ask.
Pause. No.
Hey, I'm so sorry, Liz, I'm late.
Oh, honey, here we go again.
Yep, we're back. I need to share my screen again because it kicked me out. Then we need to present. Yes, thank you. Okay, great. So here we are. Yeah, so natural law expressions. So really it's like, okay, these, it sounds pretty simple, and it is, but how does it look in our lives, and how does it look, and how can we recognize it in ourselves and others, right? So the expression, if we're talking about the expression, we can say what we are using to create. Another way to say this is, where are we coming from, right? And there's a polarity here, and we've all heard this before. The positive expression would be love, right? Or consciousness, or pure love, or whatever it is that you call that, whatever it is that's gathered from who and what we all are. Excuse me. And the unconsciousness would then be from fear, right? So in these times too, we see a lot of folks, not a lot of folks, some folks coming from a place of fear and trying their darndest to move forward to try to go from fear to knowledge. And you can't cross over. This is a chart where you can't cross it. Like once you've started with love or fear, that's basically your trajectory, unless you go back to the beginning and shift where you're coming from, right? So that's our free will choice. And once we have that and we go, oh, okay, where am I coming from? Then if you're coming from love, again, your consciousness is more expanded and you have access to the next initiating expression, how it starts, which is knowledge, or the acceptance of truth. And we've already talked about, in the context of natural law, what we say truth is. Coming from a fear place, it's not really possible to fully be open and accepting of the truth, because we're tight and we're contracted, right? So the only thing probably that we're going to be choosing is more ignorance or refusal of the truth. But we see this on, I say quote in quotes here, the divisiveness of both sides. We can see this in both of those sides, if you will. I use that in quotes. So when we come from love and we're accepting of the truth and we're open to knowledge, the internal expression is that we know who we are, which is sovereign being, right? It's I like how he puts it. Mark calls it an internal monarchy, right? A monarchy is the authority of one. It's your supreme authority. Sovereignty is basically free, not a slave, right? Not a slave to anything or anyone else. And when we're coming from fear and ignorance, then of course there's confusion. And again, there's that misalignment in the parts of us that are embodied in our, in our humanness. Now our mind, our heart, our gut. And when we know who we are, then we're free, right? The external expression of that. So I know we like to say, Liz and I always like to say too on our podcast, that we're already free. We've always already been free. And the more we own that internally through this process, the more freedom we'll see externally reflected back to us. So this is what happens in society. This is external anarchy, right? And anarchy is just no government, basically.
No rulers,
no rulers, yes.
rulers.
No rulers,
Just
nobody
because-
ruling over us.
Yeah, the parenthesis right there, because that has been a hijacked word. And so when you're looking really into what that means, because people say, oh, we don't want anarchy, right? It's not because they think of chaos and confusion, but the principle is that the universe is self-organizing, right? And that interactions are voluntary and there is no external ruler.
Yeah. Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Liz. And so when we're in fear and ignorance and confusion, then what do we have to do? Control. Because we don't have an internal compass. We don't have that inner sense of, I know who I am. I know how to act. Natural right action comes through me. No, I've got to control everything. So we see this on the micro and the macro level. This is an external monarchy. This is basically how the world has been going for a while. Not anymore, but it's how it was going. And so the manifestation of that, what we actually see, what we actually create when we come from love, knowledge, sovereignty, freedom, is actually order. So there is a natural order to everything. We do not need rulers. We do not need, and again, this is something that, is this possible in our lifetime? And this, I don't know, that would be so amazing, right? To see. And I believe personally that we can see it in groups, right? We can create our local communities where we can actually see this manifested good, which is what we say we want, which is that the actual law of attraction. When we follow natural law, then what's naturally happens is order and good. And then when we don't, it's chaos. It's manifested not good. So it's very simple. It's very, very simple, but it's not necessarily easy for everybody. And it's really this coming from love bit and accepting knowledge and knowing who you are, just like I was talking about with something very practical, like a speeding ticket or whatever. And it's not to blame or judge yourself for maybe not wanting to deal with that in the moment. There's none of that here, but it's when you're ready going, I wonder what else is possible here if I come from love and I come from actually, doing what I need to do to know what I need to know about what this really means, what these words mean on this citation. How do I go about saying, no, actually, I know who I am, so I don't consent to that form of slavery. That's not for me anymore. So we just take our time and we're patient with ourselves and we do what we can. When we're ready to do it, but taking that responsibility and being honest with myself. I don't want to deal with that right now. So I'm actually going to just pay the ticket and, when I'm ready, I'll do it kind of thing. So this is how we see it expressed in the world. Okay. Tips. Go ahead, Liz.
And to, again, give my 2 cents of that whole slide. The revolution won't be televised, right? It starts with each and every one of us dismantling this internal systems of control, of coercion, of dominance that we have. Where is my inner tyrant? Where is that person inside of me that wears that costumes, right? And then just dominates and feels like he has that kind of power and jurisdiction over my essence. We gathered some practical tips here because one of the main goals for the portal experience is knowledge, information, and then practical steps, community coming together. Because when we sit and talk, the two of us on the podcast, there's limited interaction with everyone who's watching that. And we wanted to create an experience where learning together, we're sharing, because somebody may say, oh my God, I went through this and I learned that, or have you ever thought about this? And sometimes a question will prompt to reflection that then leads to growth. So it's more than just us here and you sitting there consuming this, but let's talk about it and let's see how do we implement all that. So just a few things that we highlighted here. It's much more than this, but always check in with yourself and ask, is what's being asked of me something that I would actually do? And this can be from our own internal processes, our own conditioning, right? I must do this because, wait a minute, what's really going on here? Make your interactions voluntary as much as possible. Of course, that if something has happened and you can save someone's life, you're probably not going to ask them, would you like me to save your life? They may not be in a condition where they could speak of that, but, and hopefully there won't be any lingering karma from that, because we also don't know what's going on. So I do a lot of energy work, and in my energy work, if somebody brings someone else into the session, I always ask them to ask permission from that person to be in that space. And if it's the case of someone being unconscious, like we've had before, someone is in a coma, I'll take upon myself to ask permission of their higher self. And that always comes through. So don't think that it's limited to the physical, right? Don't take what's not yours, folks. We all know this here. Beware. And this can even be things, because sometimes we'll think of like, oh, this is not mine, I'm not going to take it, right? But if you're sharing something that was originated from somebody else, so like we've been talking about Mark Passio, he's been a great inspiration for this presentation. It's give credit where credit is due. Be aware of violent or coercive communication or actions. Sometimes we think of violence or coercion in just physical aspects, but we can be violent with our words and our intentions. Become attentive of how your perception are creating your experiences. So there's always a different choice of perception available at every moment. And remembering that truth is what is, perception is the lens that we decide to look objective truth through.
Yeah.
And we open the grounds here, I believe, for some reflection and sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I just wanted to say too that, making your interactions voluntary, just to add to that, that's something that, even something as simple as giving advice to someone who is, family members who aren't asking for it, right? I mean, that's definitely been a learning curve and a learning experience is can we, think about that, or just the invitation is to, how often does that happen for you, and how does that feel when you do that? And is there another possibility there to ask permission for even something as simple as that?
Are you open to a reflection? It's a question like to ask, right? Somebody shares something and we have this tendency to want to fix or guide, and then it's like, well, are you open? Because sometimes they just need to be heard. And
even with friends, even with friends, just people really well. So most people do not want your reflections, honestly. I mean, in general, and
And with that said, would you like
a reflection? If you consent to it, we will not coerce you. These questions are your invitation. They are available to you.
Yes.
And we can talk about these once we shut off the recording.
Yes.
But what did you learn from this? Is there one takeaway that you had, maybe that was new to you, or just that reiterated something for you. What areas in your life are you still engaged in coercive tactics? And this isn't a judgment or a shaming thing. This is just, being curious. Do you recognize violence around you? And in what ways? Subtle ways, extreme ways? And where are you consenting to being coerced? And again, this is not a blame judgment thing. This is really, really getting clear and honest with yourself as you're ready to be, because there are so many ways that we do this. And some ways are inevitable and in our society. I mean, you go to the grocery store and maybe you don't want to pay for your food, but actually that's the agreement we have, right? So that's not necessarily, but we're not, don't steal, don't take what's not yours. We go back to that. So these are just a few questions. There's anything else that you want to share? We're going to let's get to actually just the resources. So this is the website of Mark Passio, whatonearthishappening.com, which he has a ton of free content. He talks about a lot. He actually used to be some sort of high priest in the Church of Satanism and the occult. So he's got a lot of knowledge on the other side of this. And then, of course, our website, thesourceconnection.us. We will be doing the portal to something. Next month will be the portal to self-ownership, self-governance. So we will be talking about some more practical aspects of this in life today. So if you're interested in that, come back and find us and register for that if you'd like. But this will always be, this first one will always be here for you as a gift. So.
And I also would like to make a joke. If you go back to that other slide,
yes,
in the last thing here says, where are you consenting to being coerced? And you spoke about going to the grocery store.
Yeah.
And if you come to California, actually, you can steal up to $500 of someone else's property and not be coerced into paying it. So it's interesting also how, the powers or the people that know this kind of knowledge will actually instigate that kind of behavior, right? So it moves us away from that inner knowing and their inner resourcefulness. So yeah, I couldn't.
That's great. I'm coming back to get some groceries, and then I'm going to come back to Tennessee again. $500 worth. Hey, that'll.
Oh, my heart. Yeah. So
yeah. But it
we'll
is
give
like
that last slide up if you want
we'll
to take a
it up.
screenshot. Mark has I believe it's about 8 hours of just natural law where he'll branch into all of the details of everything that we talked about and much more.
It's very deep. Yeah.
And I'd like to pay my respect to him and his passion for sharing and giving and really being an agent of change in this realm.
Yeah. And he does say, that please, anybody who wants to share this information that he's putting out there, that we're putting out there, please share it far and wide. I know it seems very simple, but actually there's a lot to this, a lot of subtleties that go along with this. Just like Liz was saying, the legal system or the law is saying it's okay to take $500. Oh, that's okay. Is that moral? Well, we just talked about that, So we are being ushered into this system of like, oh, but that's okay. Just listen to us. You don't actually have to think for yourself at all. We know we're not there, but so yeah, everyone take a screenshot if you need to. Come back and find us. Thank you for being with us, whether you're here live or listening or watching later. We really appreciate and love you a lot. And we hope to see you soon.